start our second day of the Futures Forum. Thank you so much for being here this morning, despite the very dense and packed day we had yesterday. Welcome to our newcomers. I'd like to remind you of how the forum is organized. Yesterday we talked about anticipation, about what we can anticipate from the future. We talked about the environment, about geopolitics, about technologies, and then we went through anthropological transitions, and we've introduced you to the key findings of the VG 2023 report that you will have on print in a month. And then we've closed the day with a panel about the future crisis with the president of the Red French Cross and with the General Béchon from the French Armed Forces. Today we are going to look at how business, civil society and local authorities are managing this future. And we've seen that planning for the future was instrumental in dealing with the future crisis. We've also seen that crisis will be more and more present in our world in the future. You have the program on this slide. We will start with a roundtable moderated by Adrian Taylor, the head of the Foresight office, and he will moderate this panel with three business stakeholders. Please, you can join me on stage. Thank you very much for being here. This roundtable will be held into English, and that is why we've got translators in the back, and they will translate this roundtable into French. So you will, if you want the translation, you can carry headsets, and thanks to the headsets, you will have the translation into French. Thank you. Adrian, you have the floor.
Thank you. I can speak without a microphone loud enough, but anyway, we will start now. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous pleasure to be with you. We're going to have a panel that's a slightly different panel in many respects. The first thing, obviously, it's in English. However, you are most welcome to pose questions also in French. And we will deal with them in English, but you can still ask them in French. It's going to be different as well, partly because of the subject and the people present. I'm very fortunate to have with me these fellow panelists, and we have people who are representatives of companies, Gaël from Michelin, founded in 1888, I believe. Yeah? Yeah? So Foresight, for a company that's been around since 1888, think about it. Yeah? And we also have Marianne. And Marianne, you're with Air Liquide. That was founded in 1902, actually, wasn't it? 1902. So, these are not sort of the new kids on the block. And we do have a new kid on the block, of course. We have Volkswagen. It was only founded in 1937. Sorry, I'm very sorry about that, Wolfgang, but, you're the new kid on the block. Thinking about it, we yesterday saw in the poll that you did that you thought that the companies would not be able to adapt. You remember those different rings that they had with what the options were? The largest number was that companies were not going to be able to adapt to this new future which we are facing. So that's going to be one big part of what we're going to talk about here. How do you, as foresighters, manage to get your companies to think about those big future issues? When you're not the new kid on the block, you've got all this legacy that you have behind you. But there's a second question. The title, the name of this entire event is Rupture, ruptures, unthought of events that suddenly come and annoy us, throw everything upside down. Fukushima, 2008 crisis, Brexit, Trump, COVID, you can keep on going. even if you manage to get them to listen to the long-term direction, how do you, as foresighters, in a company where you cannot just change everything like that, how do you get them to think about that? To finally come out on the thought, well, how do we get the people up there and around us to listen and to hear what we're doing and act on it? That's where I hope we will end with this panel. And as François presented, this is there for the corporate world. We'll see what happens in the decision-making and politics and elsewhere later. But for the companies, let me therefore start just a little thought with you, dear public. Can I ask everybody who doesn't work for themselves just to put their hand up? If you're self-employed, you can keep your hand down. Everybody else, put your hand up. You work for an organization or a company or a university or I don't know what. Okay, now keep your hands up. And those of you who think that your company or organization is well prepared for the future, keep your hand up. Well, there are some of you, and as your foresighters, I think you might well be responsible for having made that happen. But there is an interesting story there. Now, I know you're not, you can now put your hands down, thank you. I know that some of you will then say, yes, but look at what's happened out there, dear colleagues. How do you get this message across? There are fundamental changes, which we have discussed yesterday. Be it the environmental, which is not just a crisis. I liked the expression yesterday. It's not a crisis, it's a change of paradigm. This is something fundamental happening we have to do. But it's not just that. There are many things. How do you get them going? Just for the first round, I'll give you a little bit more time, but afterwards it's going to be a conversation. Marianne, let me throw the ball to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Adrian. It's not yet working. I don't have your voice. Thank you, Adrian, for the introduction. Thank you, François, for the invitation. The first thing that happened at Air Liquide is it was in 2015. It was after the monetary crisis, and people felt at very high level the need to go back to fundamental. Why are we here for? And Air Liquide business is about producing oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, argon, neon. And so we gave a name to those little products. We called them essential small molecules. And it was more an R&D push towards top management to go back to some scientific fundamental and say, you know, those molecules, they were there before Air Liquide exists. They are in nature. They will be there after. So we have a role to play in the middle. And this little philosophical moment that I lived at that time was actually very important for the hope and the confidence in the future in times of crisis. In 2018, the communication department of Air Liquide chose Inventor of the Future as a baseline for our communication. You imagine, as Foresight manager or innovation people, it's an avenue in front of us. Inventor of the Future. It's not only us, it's our colleagues. So it's a great story. So now how you make it real? And within Air Liquide, we invest very high capital into that are supposed to stay and serve our customers, and you have two of them here today, for more than a decade. So we need to project ourselves in the future, in a very concrete future of a region, of a sector, and understand what Michelin will be doing with our nitrogen and what Volkswagen is going to be doing with our gas mixtures. And we need to trust our customers. And this is part also of the culture. So Foresight is very much in the hands also of operational people and business developers at Air Liquide. Nonetheless, we have a Foresight team of 5 people today, and 2 of them are here today. And we try to go beyond that. And we did our share. Air Liquide last year announced a strategic plan with 4 pillars. And nobody told us that the work we had done before was useful for that, of course. You don't get the feedback. But we recognize in this strategic plan 3 forces we had been exploring. The first one is really about the future of cooperation. The corporation who want to have a future, they need to redefine what performance is. And so we did work on that, and we did work on that very pragmatically. So it means going with business people on the ground and working hand in hand with them in building a business strategy in Germany, in France, and in other places like this. So it's very pragmatic foresight. The second change we looked into is very much linked to energy transition. And you know, energy transition is already well advanced in many countries in the world, but it takes very different formats, depending on the legacy, depending on the industry, depending on the politics. And so we did also explore that more from a business model, a digital, and also the hydrogen part. And this is very much a very strong pillar in the strategy today. And this energy transition is opening a new foresight domain for a company like Air Liquide, is geopolitics. We were not in geopolitics until now, but now we have to understand the geopolitical dimensions of business. And this is a second forces I wanted to talk about. And the last one is about people. It's also very strong in the strategy that Air Liquide has communicated. You can read it on the internet. It's called Act for All, and it's a recognition that the company is made of people, is working with customers who are people, working with suppliers who are people, and operating plants in places where you have people living around. And so it's all about people. And people today, many of us are facing fears and indignation and existential questions. Some of us react, some others engage into change. And so within a company, we see that. And so we try to understand also this anthropological shift, difficult to say. And I'm happy that Futuribles chose that thematic this year, because it will be greatly helpful for us. So 3 changes.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause for the first statements as well. Come on. Whoa. Wolfgang, you've heard what Marianne said. So they are thinking 10 years in the future at least, developing a roadmap. Their cooperation point I found very interesting as well. You can't just do this in an empty room. So one way of getting your organization in the right long-term direction is also cooperating with others. And then in addition, the themes, energy transition, clearly, geopolitics, people, are they the same things that you have? Please.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, thank you very much. So at first, I'm very happy to be here today and to share with you my thoughts about future thinking and about the relevance of future foresight. And I found this sentence very appropriate for foresight. It's about cooperation. So in times of ruptures, times of disruptions, we need to build bridges. This is probably the most important thing because we recognize today that the challenges for tomorrow are so big that we cannot solve them alone. We need to cooperate and to understand how we can realize cooperation in a broader way. You asked me how it was possible to put foresight on the strategic agenda of my company. So this is a very good question, and at first I tried to understand the needs of my company. Who are the key players in these strategic issues? What can I use to make a convincing case? Because you need always to convince. What data quality is needed to engage leaders? Yeah. So what we as a foresight team can produce to get the trust of our leaders. When is information needed and from whom does it need to be presented? Yeah, And also a big question, are there some tipping points where we find the oil so we can fuel the processes with our information? Second, at last, it was where you need to place the Foresight team to be effective, to be really efficient. In short, I have dealt with the purpose of Foresight, creating a strategic and tactical master plan to establish future thinking in the company. And now, since 2003, more than 20 doctoral theses have been written in my department for Foresight purposes. And the first thing was to find the right place. And so, as you know, I'm responsible not only for the brand Volkswagen, I'm responsible for all the brands in the Volkswagen Group, Skoda, Bentley, Audi, and the other ones. So I said where I can be more effective. And so for me, it was clear I must move in the heart of the company, and this is research and development. So this is the beginning of the process. Especially in the research environment, I find here also a protected place. And if you have sometimes from the perspective of others crazy ideas, you need this protected place, and research is a very welcome area. So here I found the freedom to experiment and directly influence the product portfolio of the company based on innovation roadmaps. So we planned our innovation for the next 20 to 30 years. So if you like to realize plans, for example, in countries, you need to see 20 years and forward. A next big thing was, how can I convince engineers? Because engineers very often believe only in black and white, in 0 and 1. So in graphs, in charts, yeah. And the most of the discussion which we held in future research are qualitative discussions. Yesterday we had a meeting and listened about the topic of time, and I wonder if we could be able to realize a Foresight research based on more roadmaps, more on the to show the dynamic of developments and of currents. So for this reason, and then I can stop, we have developed a tool where we can scan, analyze different currents of development based on AI-driven tools. What we do is, since 20 years now, we analyze data from different data sources. It's about invention disclosures, scientific publications, new startups, financial transactions, which are very important to see where the money is moved. Yeah? So we must follow the way of the money to see which topics come out and have a potential to scale up. Yeah, and in a nutshell, we have developed something like a real-time monitor and radar system where we can analyze and recognize the motives of movement. For us, it's not so important to see what happens, because it's always done. We like to understand why things happen and who are the drivers behind, and for which intention, what they intend to do. And if we understand then this system, then we can go to the strategy department, give them an advice, and said, look, we see now the competitors' fields, we understand the direction of movement in different governments, and we believe that are stable or not, have a high weakness or not, and especially those things are highly relevant for the company, which has a high impact and high uncertainty. Yeah, these two tools or two topics are very important. Thanks. First.
Thank you, Wolfgang. I think that you've already, Gaël, you've got a number of points that are coming out. The building bridges, the cooperation, you can't do this on your own. Identifying the actors and understanding their language. I think the point of the engineers is they need a particular type of language, which will be different maybe to a chemist, which is different maybe to, etc. And understanding that allows you to identify the tipping points. So where can I press and maybe cause something to move, and finding a safe space. Do you find some resonance there, or how else do you do in Michelin to change things?
Hello, everyone. Yes, so I represent here Michelin. So Michelin is almost known for its core product, which is tire. We do all other things, but we are actually the world leader in tires, but the world leader with 10% market share. So the world leader, but among many. So you can also see it the opposite way. In 90% of the occurrences, people buy another brand. So we are plenty of potential disruptors around us, not counting even the disruptions that could come also for other actors that are not in the game today. So one of our mission also is to try to understand this play of actors, and somehow to be a bit the representative, even sometimes the sanctuary of the complex thinking, as opposed to the 1-0, as Wolfgang was saying, that we could call the reductionist or Cartesian approach, and which often doesn't allow to understand where the key disruptions could come from. So one of our function is that, and I would not like to repeat, because really what also is something that always impressed me when I exchange with my peers, is that we have the same job, really. No, we do the same thing, and all the things that they have described, Michelin, Foresight do more or less the same kind of things, and all the corporate foresighters that I have discussed with have the same mission of helping a big organization to prepare for the future, and to understand also what's going on. The role of understanding, explaining, the complex thinking, once again, is extremely key. And so I used to say to my team, and we have even indicators on that we have to spend half of our time understanding, building a vision of the future, understanding the present also often, and the other half of the time, which is as much important, is how to make this useful for the company. How we translate this understanding to the leaders, how we educate themselves in understanding the world, how we challenge the current strategy, which suppose that we know it, which suppose a big intimacy with the rest of the organization, to understand what they are thinking for, preparing for, and so on. And one thing maybe that I could insist on to complete is the kind of two levels that we are managing. We are working on trends, or on big transformation, big ruptures, sometimes slow, sometimes sudden, and of the future, making scenarios or using scenarios made by others like Futuribles to work on the so what and so on. And also we are exposed to shocks. In fact, Michelin, like any companies, is exposed to shocks. And sometimes we have to be extremely reactive in helping the organization understanding what's going on. So, and this part of our job is growing due to the volatility of the world in general, is growing, and it's interestingly different from our core job, from our traditional job, which is a job of researchers. We like to go in depth, we like to be complete, we hate time pressure, and when you have this kind of shocks, when you have a COVID or an Ukraine, you have 1 week to give a value that you would have spontaneously like to have 6 months to do. So it changes everything. And if you have not prepared a bit beforehand, you have no chance to bring some value to the deciders. So we have to be kind of aware of the latent crisis, and this is very difficult and different from going in depth on a certain subject. We have to do both, because we are also asked to go in depth on certain subjects. But maybe to illustrate that, to illustrate both the complex and the shocks, what do you think was the biggest shock for Michelin in 2020, for example? Does anybody have an idea? 2020 is a year of COVID. Yes, but no. Yes, it was obviously a big shock. But for us as a company, the semiconductor shortage has much more consequence. By the way, it was kind of a latent fire that has exploded due to the COVID because of the need for teleworking and so on and so on. So, and by the way, we have to be humble enough to say when COVID came, we made scenarios. We had a very short time. I think we have been helpful for the organization, but sincerely, we didn't think on this consequence, which was kind of systemic. And we think that people will stop driving because of containment, and this had an impact, but much less in terms of number than the semiconductors. If you look to geopolitical, second kind of example, what was a big geopolitical shock like last year? Ukraine, yeah. Yes and no. For us, Michelin, Ukraine, of course, is a hit, but based on who we are, we have been much more hit by another shock, which is the Sri Lanka crisis. Because Sri Lanka is a much bigger country for us than Russia. We are, by the way, the first private employer in Sri Lanka. You can think about rubber trees, this kind of thing. And so for us, fortunately, we had worked beforehand on what is Sri Lanka, and the fundamental tensions that are existing for years in that country. So two examples to show you the kind of role that a Foresight might have, kind of cultural radar of where the stakes are, and while being also capable to investigate in depth some subjects, like for example, we have seen yesterday on other examples, so which is more our classical way of working. We have also this kind of radar to have, and the shocks that are the more preeminent in the medias, in the mindsets, around the table in the family dinner, are not necessarily the one you have to work more on.
Thank you very much, Gaël. Woo. We've had an initial round, therefore. Everybody's kind of given some stuff. Let's get into some faster, snappier sort of ideas. Gaël, you threw out a number of points. We'll come to the shocks in a minute. Let's start. You don't actually quite fancy putting this to you, Wolfgang. 50% of the time making a vision, 50% working out how to apply that vision in the organization. Sounds like your roadmaps. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, so let me make some statements to scenarios. So scenarios are really important tool to open eyes. But I give you an example. We have calculated now the new scenarios for Europe. We found 8 very consistent scenarios. 2 are crisis scenarios, sleeping Europe. It's the dormant battlefield, but very positive scenarios also, which says where we see clear that scenario that Europe has a big opportunity to enter in sustainable competition with China, for example, and US. But much more important than the result of scenario is the work with a scenario. So bringing the people in the process so they understand the consequences of change. Finally, then you need to translate these findings in processes, and we have think about if we must create a new system, a resilient system. One sentence more. We have done an experiment with University in Hamburg, and we showed 100 students, so it was representative. 10 minutes movies, clips from movies which are negative, which have negative sentiments from science fiction movies, and 10 minutes positive movies. And then we put the Volkswagen logo for 10 seconds in the picture. And then we said, write down everything which you have in your mind. And it was very interesting. If the audience was confronted with negative scenario, the creativity, how Volkswagen will be effective in 10, 20 years, was very, very slow. So only some thoughts, and all these thoughts comes from the past. If we like to engage people thinking about new topics, innovation for the future, we must give them also the opportunity to think about positive futures, about utopia.
And you see, therefore, the vision part plays an important role here, quite clearly. We're already into the shocks, though, as well, interestingly, because you've already talked about the need for resilience. Gaël was also interested. You pointed out that good foresight will have identified certain weak spots in advance. So you'd already looked at Sri Lanka. So it wasn't that you actually had to do everything in a week. You'd already got some elements in there because you've done the foresight. So when the crisis hits, you're that little bit higher level, in a sense, in terms of knowledge and understanding. And also, Wolfgang, another thing that strikes me about what you were saying is the need in a crisis, very frequently you have to act fast. If it's only seen as negative, your Hamburg experiment, then you will get the, oh, let's do what we used to do response. So we probably need in crises to actually also provide the, by the way, this is an opportunity. Marianne, thinking about this, you know, we're aiming to go and deal with long-term issues. You know there's energy transition must be done. We know that the people of tomorrow need the competencies we need for tomorrow. You know there are the geopolitical. How do you deal with these nasty surprises that keep on coming up and sort of blowing things away? You know, is it by what, you know, what they've been saying, or you do other things?
Well, we do classical things like every year looking at emerging risks and trying to review with the risk department if there is something that we miss. But as Wolfgang said, imagine yourself in a meeting with somebody presenting you a list of 10 emerging risks for your company and you're a CEO. It's not inspiring. It needs to be done, but it's not inspiring, and it's crystallizing fears and not the reaction we want to create. So still it needs to be done because we need to gather the information behind. And back to your question, I think COVID has been a great help for us, at least at the Liquide. Maybe we were because of the past, very confident about the fact that we knew what will happen in the future, because we have people looking at markets, you know, technologies. We have lots of people watching what's happening, but everybody understood that there were things we didn't know, and this humility is actually very helpful for us now. It gives us legitimacy as a team. So that's my second point. And maybe to your question directly, what came to mind is that to be confident about the future, sometimes it's interesting to look at the past, and we're talking about this with Gaël on the side, but just, you know, we're working on 2030 scenarios for Air Liquide. It's 7 years from now. So when I look back 7 years in the back, it's amazing the number of things that have happened and the number of things we've been able to do and to adjust, to adapt. So telling the story of the past is sometimes also very interesting. It's not a reflex, it's not something we usually like doing as Foresight managers, but it's about the legacy.
I can see, I'm going to give you the word just in a second, Gaël, but I can see Wolfgang has got an example here and he wants to get it out. Come on.
So I really love to think about the past, because this is really important to identify our capability, our potential of change. Yeah. So if you like to run a marathon, so at first we analyze your condition to take this opportunity, yeah, and we can learn a lot from the past and about the timing and the time which we need for this transformation process, yeah. When you match then these capabilities and competences, skills, yeah, which a society have, a company has, yeah, then in different scenario, then you can see if the company is well prepared or not. Yeah. So the question come up then: which skills do we need to be future fit in 20 years? Do we have now the curricula in the universities, for example? So when we must integrate and hurry up, for example, with breakthrough technology ruptures like quantum technologies, yeah? Today, a lot of companies have 1-2 advanced people which think about quantum technologies. But quantum technology, for example, is a technology which now is driven by governments like China. So this technology becomes a geopolitical issue, and we need to think as a corporation together with our countries what we can do to be competitive in a global competition.
And in fact, you've just picked up 2 of Marianne's points of earlier of getting the geopolitics on the agenda and the people on the agenda. And it seems like these 2 points are part of the answer to the meeting with the surprises. Gaël, any comments on this, on this, you know, the surprises that keep on getting in our way?
Yeah, we have these two fields, but we have many others, and we have to think on where the adaptation need can come from. One thing that I've impressed me yesterday, for example, is in the result of the survey. It seemed that a majority here think that in the future companies could be unadapted to the changes. And this is extremely strange because to me it sounds impossible. And a company cannot be unadapted. Because if it doesn't adapt, it dies. So if you don't have customers, nor employees, nor resources, you just don't exist anymore. A company is not transcendental, and a company has not the power to get resources in the public to continue living. They are in a constant competition. So company die, but the company at a certain time they are adapted or close to death. But the company can be unprepared, which is completely different, and unprepared to adapt fast enough to the magnitude of the shock. So our job is to make that our employers, our companies will last, will keep either growing or making their purpose in a changing world. But the concept of having a world collapsing and companies that remain the same is, to me, interestingly, an oxymoron. So we have to look to all this potential disruption, geopolitical, societal, so also regarding the society as customer and or employers and or influencers and or the people that make the current of thought, la fabrique de l'opinion, as we said. Who is finally making the opinion? We have to look to new actors. Once again, we are in a game. So who are the new actors? What is the likelihood of the current actors to remain, to adapt fast enough? Who is changing? And so on and so forth. So yes, we do, as Marianne said, all the classical jobs which are completely essential. I mean, we have to make this risk cartography. We have to make this trends radar. We have to make or get these scenarios. And once we have that, we are ready to have an impact on the group, which also supposed to think what they have in mind, which is often the difficult part. When you enter in a room of a COMEX, you don't necessarily know because we are not in the COMEX, what these guys are thinking about, what these guys are somehow preparing, and that you have to say that maybe it could resonate with more or less relevancy to the vision of the future you have built, and which is highly challengeable, but it's another aspect.
Thank you very much. I realize there are lots of things here. Yes, let's give a round of applause to all of them. Thank you, guys. I realize we could keep bouncing back and forward here, but I see there's only 10 minutes left, and I'm going to do something a bit strange. I told you it was a different session, yeah? I want you in a moment to turn around and talk to somebody, preferably the person you don't know, about what is it you've learnt from the panel so far. I'm going to give you only 2 minutes, but the aim is that you meet somebody you don't know already. And if you're sitting at the back and sitting far away, you just turn around and meet somebody you don't know. 2 minutes, and I'm then going, warning, I am then going to come and gather a couple of the comments that you made to each other. So if you talk about the beautiful weather or the quality of the coffee, that's what you're going to have to tell us, okay? So I'm just going to get you, and I'm just going to say, it doesn't have to be questions, it's comments. What are the things that you retain? What have you found interesting, exciting? Go, 2 minutes with your neighbors. You can do it as well. Allez-y, allez-y. Hein. Retournez où? Yeah, you can talk as well, can't you?
Oui, non, mais si tu veux dépasser de quelques minutes, il y a pas de
quelques
problème.
minutes,
on a
mais
pris
bon.
5 minutes
Ouais,
tard, tu peux garder les 5 minutes de plus.
Ok, super, merci. Ladies and gentlemen, shh. Ladies and gentlemen, I am now going to gather just a couple of voices. What have you been talking about? Shh, shh, shh. Otherwise I start singing. Do you know troubadourix? Cacophonics in English. If I start singing, it's bad news. Rain comes indoors. Let me grab a couple of voices. You know, I'm going to choose over here because... Yeah, come on. Tell us, what were you talking about?
we talked about two topics. One is the embedment into the organization and translating it into actual roadmaps, which is much more concrete than maybe 5-10 years ago. And also, how do you get people to be creative when thinking about the future, and the importance of positive scenarios as well.
Vous pouvez parler en français aussi, bien sûr, il n'y a aucun problème. Il y a traduction simultanée. Donc, qui est-ce que je prends ici? Je regarde des gens qui regardent le plafond pour éviter mon regard. Ben, allez-y, on va. Allez.
Alors nous, on ne se connaissait pas, donc on s'est présenté mutuellement. Madame travaille pour Michelin, donc elle a pu commenter les propos de Monsieur Queinnec, et je travaille pour la Croix-Rouge, qui est intervenue hier, donc on a échangé sur les prises de vue de nos différents responsables.
Très bien. Ah, et comme pareil, les responsables, parfois c'est dangereux. Hein? On ne va pas poser la question qui est sorti le mieux. OK, come on, I'll go right over the other side, because of course, when you sit over the far side, you're so far away from the panel, you cannot possibly... You smile very nicely, young lady.
Bonjour, donc je suis Amandine Nourte et je travaille au Centre d'études et prospectives du ministère de l'Agriculture. Et donc on a échangé avec ma voisine qui travaille chez Orange sur beaucoup là sur ce qu'on faisait voilà, dans nos différentes structures.
Et c'est la même chose qu'ici ou c'est différent?
Alors, pour Orange, j'ai l'impression que c'est assez proche, non? Et non, au ministère de l'Agriculture, c'est assez différent, mais ça ne sert pas les mêmes... voilà, ça n'a pas les mêmes buts et les mêmes objectifs.
And that's the problem. When you have different objectives, of course, you need different methods to arrive there and different target audiences. Who else is smiling over there? There must be somebody smiling over here. Come on. Would you mind?
Merci. Donc nous, en fait, avec ma...
Thank you. With my neighbor, we mentioned cooperation. This is something I heard. Openness, cooperation, to integrate the foresight in our process. And also, we realize we all do the same. We said it. And also importance of communication.
Indeed, the building bridges, the cooperation, working with the clients, getting the language of the people you're dealing with, they're all fundamental. It also strikes me, because of what you were also saying, that we're often doing the same thing in the similar organizations, although if you've got different goals, you do different things. There's also the element of, couldn't we learn more from each other? Not just methods or how, but the contents as well. So I think there's something in there. Anybody else want to give me anybody desperate to give me a last smile? Come on. You're all trying to avoid my gaze, aren't you? Anybody? Yes, please.
Ouais, bonjour Valérie.
Yes.
Je travaille chez Orange, je suis en charge de sujets d'anticipation et de prospective. Et juste une petite manière différente de travailler, on a monté un club Open Prospective où on réfléchit à la prospective avec plusieurs entreprises. Un certain nombre sont ici, l'AFD, Orano, j'en oublie certainement. Donc voilà, je passe le message. On est très ouvert à coopérer avec d'autres entreprises.
And that is actually very interesting, because with the initiative of François from Futuribles, in fact, the reason why we have this panel in part is because Volkswagen, Shell, and the Michelin friends have already had several rounds of interaction around the question of, well, what is foresight? How do you do it? So we then said, well, why not make a panel out of this? And Marianne very kindly agreed to jump onto the stage as well. So I think a round of applause for Marianne for jumping on as well. Go on. We've heard about roadmaps, we've heard about vision, we've heard about that we are exchanging, gosh, isn't that the similar or sometimes different depending on your objectives? We've understood the role of cooperation and building bridges and making things work. We've got a final round here where I can give you a last sort of wrapping up in a sense. One of the big problems is getting other people who are not in our groups to take advantage of the foresight work we do. It's very great that we've done scenarios about, but if nobody does anything as a result, there is a problem. So how do you manage to get that going? How do you get that working? I'll work in sort of a different order. Gaël, I'll take you first. Poor Marianne's been victim enough.
Yeah, I will try to answer, but there was also an interesting question. How do you do to build a vision of the future and so on? So as you mentioned for Orange, and we have been in touch on this club, but there are others, and that we are in. One of the techniques is the collective intelligence. Well, I think you are all convinced, but we are. Every individual is so much full of biases. So the only way that we found to compensate the individual biases is to have many people discussing on the same subjects and projecting their own biases until we found different trajectories that we call scenarios. And another way also is to force the people to go out of their intellectual zone of comfort and to be obsessed by controversy. For example, if I have in my team someone that I feel more on the planet, more ecology, and so on, so I will make him or her discuss with a climate skeptic. If I have someone which is very financial, very business, I will try to make him or her in touch with another body which is much more towards social and people concerns and so. So yes. So the message here is that it's difficult. So the first answer to the how is with difficulty. It's a difficult game, but we are given the time. As in our corporation, we are a kind of privileged people that have the time to investigate and to make the controversial, while most of our colleagues, they don't have. They could maybe do it personally, but they just have no time. They are on the front. We are a bit further from the front, and so we have the responsibility of take the time to make this controversial, and then to make it useful. So there are several tools. One I would like to insist on, which is probably one of the future of Foresight, because we are also thinking on the foresight of Foresight. Foresight is changing with the world. One of the, I think, trend of our job is also to prepare the leaders, to prepare the organization to have some kind of foresight skills. So not be anymore or less and less the kind of guru, the kind of druid that you bring in the room and talks to people that are completely obsessed by the short term, but also makes these people grow on this aspect with a reasonable amount of time. So things that we do is, for example, we decided to hire internally hire high potential, so future leaders. So I will be very happy to have in my team a future leader of the group, which is relatively young. She's a lady, and hopefully she will be a future leader of a group. I hope Michelin, but given the person for sure, and so she will make 3 years with us, and this is the first time that we have this kind of experiment. So normally they are given operational responsibilities bigger and bigger. Here we decided to make this kind of journey to her. And we will also make some kind of session. I love, for example, the survey. I would like to make the survey, the same kind of survey to the board of directors, so 100 people, the top 100 of the company. It will be very insightful because I would know better what they think on the future, which sincerely I don't know. And just by the fact of proposing them alternatives, which were very well prepared and very insightful as themselves, probably, surely, they will grow on their understanding of something that sounds obvious to us, but is our daily battle, that maybe tomorrow will not be like today. That's the key point of Foresight. That sounds completely obvious and stupid, but most of the time, every day, we are in front of this conceptual wall of people saying, hey, but what you are saying is different from today. Yes?
Yeah, thank you. I fully agree with the controversy, with the collective intelligence, and just to build upon that, we systematically, my team, try to associate another Air Liquide team when we do a work. It's like a go, no go if we don't have this internal partner. It's a way to disseminate future literacy, of course, but also to be connected to the ground and to the present and not being too far in the future. And there is a joker we have. I realized that in an engineering organization or engineer organization like Air Liquide, there is an untapped resources, which is called imagination. And imagination, everybody has one, but we don't always express it. So, because people have little time, we have started developing work on artifacts. So it's not facts. Our leaders love facts, but the future, we only have artifacts. And so we are getting trained, and we are exploring at the moment the building of artifacts about the future, with teams inside Air Liquide, not just by ourselves, and we will see what it will create.
Super, very good. So now you're building artifacts, you'll be building the future car. Well, you already do, Wolfgang.
Okay, let me make some short remarks about Foresight. So what we have learned is we might add to the normal Foresight issues, society, technology, economy, ecology, and politics, 2 issues more: innovation and creativity. Yeah, so it is about not about steep, it's about stepping. This is very important because we need to build bridge, and we need to build other bridges than from the past, and we need to hurry up. We have, and we had in the past, enough time to realize a better future. We failed as a society. So it's not about hurry up. When I hear you must hurry up, you must be faster. So this is not true. Yeah, we must decide better. That is the topic. When I hear we must be faster, I know that a system works only then with task forces. So they have failed to make the right decision. So task forces in a company is a criteria to be sick in a company. Yeah, and we need to change this attitude. We have enough time. And finally, and this is the last sentence from me, my attitude is never give up. Yeah, and I like to end with a citation of Van Gogh. I cannot change the fact that my paintings do not sell as a Foresight. Yeah, but the time will come when people will realize that they are worth more than the colors they are painted with. So I made a lot of PowerPoints, and I hope finally they have people will decide on the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang van Gogh. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we are finished on our panel. I do hope you've enjoyed it. The extra thing I say before I give the word to Yannick: you've already talked to people you didn't know just now. The mandate is in coffee break. You must talk to at least 3 people you didn't know. The point of being here is to meet people. Don't just stand in the corner. Understood? You've got the mandate. You go up to people you don't know. Talk with them. Yannick, the floor is yours. Thank you again to the panel. Well done. Woo.